My name is Helen Porter. What I'm about to tell you is something I never imagined would happen in my own marriage, with a man I thought I knew better than anyone in the world. What I discovered turned my world upside down, and maybe it will change yours too, especially if you've been married for decades and think you know everything about your spouse. I'm 68 years old. I taught second grade for 38 years here in Marietta, Georgia, before I retired. My husband, Frank, and I have been married for 47 years. We raised 3 beautiful children, and now we have 7 grandchildren who are the light of my life. From the outside, we looked like any other retired couple in our neighborhood, comfortable, predictable, settled into our routines. But everything changed on a Thursday afternoon in late September. It was around 3 o'clock. I remember because I'd just gotten back from my book club meeting at the library, and I was sitting in our sunroom having a cup of tea, thinking about what to make for dinner. That's when my phone rang. It was Tyler, my oldest grandson, Melissa's boy. He's 19, a sophomore at Georgia State. I adore him. He's always been the sensitive one, the one who calls to check on me, who remembers my birthday without his mother having to remind him. But his voice on the phone that day, it was different, shaky, scared almost. "Nana?" he said. "Are you home?" "Yes, honey, I just got back from book club. Is everything okay?" I asked, immediately worried. You know how grandmothers are. We always assume the worst. Is Grandpa home too?" Strange question. "No, sweetheart. He's at physical therapy. Why? What's wrong?" There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear traffic in the background like he was in a car. "Nana, I need to tell you something, but you have to promise not to freak out," he said quietly. My heart started beating faster. "Tyler, you're scaring me. What is it?" I was driving past the Pines Motor Lodge on Highway 41. You know, that old place near the... "I know where it is," I interrupted. It was one of those run-down motels that had seen better days. The kind of place that rented rooms by the hour, if you know what I mean. "What about it?" "I saw Grandpa there, Nana." I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. "Honey, that's impossible. Your grandfather is at physical therapy for his back. He goes every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 o'clock. Nana, I'm telling you, it was him. His car was in the parking lot. I recognized the license plate, and I saw him with his gray hair and his blue jacket, the one you got him for his birthday." My smile faded. Frank did have a blue windbreaker I'd bought him last April. He wore it constantly. In fact, he'd been wearing it when he left for his appointment today. He'd walked right past me in the kitchen without a word, just grabbed his keys off the hook and headed out the door. No goodbye kiss, no see you later. We hadn't done that in close to 2 years. "Tyler, maybe it just looked like he was with 3 women," he interrupted, his voice getting even quieter. "They were all going into a room together." "Room 17, I saw the number on the door. I felt like all the air had been sucked out of the room. 3 women? My Frank? At a seedy motel?" "That's ridiculous," I said, but my voice sounded strange even to my own ears. "Your grandfather would never—" "I took a picture, Nana. I'm texting it to you right now." My phone buzzed. With trembling hands, I opened the text message. And there it was, clear as day. Frank, my Frank, walking across a parking lot, wearing that blue windbreaker, his silver hair catching the afternoon sunlight. And behind him, 3 women, middle-aged women, all of them, dressed nicely, following him toward a motel room door. One of the women, a blonde in a burgundy sweater, had her hand on his lower back. The timestamp on the photo said 2:47 p.m., less than 15 minutes ago. "Nana, are you still there?" I couldn't speak. I just stared at that photo, my brain trying to make sense of it. "I'm sorry, Nana," Tyler was saying. "I didn't know if I should tell you, but I thought you should know." "Thank you, honey," I finally managed to say. "Thank you for telling me. I need to go now." I hung up before he could say anything else. I sat there in my sunroom, staring at that photo, my tea growing cold beside me. 47 years of marriage. I won't lie to you. The first thing I thought was affair. Of course that's what I thought. What else would a 71-year-old man be doing at a cheap motel with 3 women in the middle of the afternoon? But even as I thought it, something didn't add up. 3 women? All at once? That didn't make sense. And Frank, my Frank, He barely had the energy to stay awake through Jeopardy most nights. We'd been sleeping in separate bedrooms for almost 10 years now. He claimed it was because of my snoring, but I knew better. The truth was, we'd become strangers living in the same house. We moved around each other like furniture, familiar, functional, but not really connecting. The idea of him having the energy or desire for an affair, let alone with 3 women, no, I couldn't even imagine it. I looked at the photo again, zooming in on his face. That was definitely him, though. Same crooked way he wore his glasses. Same slight stoop in his shoulders from his bad back. The back he'd been going to physical therapy for. Twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week for the past 18 months. Always on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. Sometimes Monday or Wednesday if it was acting up. What if there was no physical therapy? What if it had all been a lie? I felt sick. Actually nauseous. I got up from my chair, went to the kitchen sink, and ran cold water over my wrists like my mother taught me to do when I felt faint. That's when I heard it. A noise coming from outside, from the detached garage at the back of our property. Frank had converted that garage into a workshop about 2 years ago. Said he wanted a space to do woodworking, to tinker with projects, to have something to do in his retirement besides watch TV. He'd installed a workbench, bought tools, put in a small heater for the winter, and he'd put a lock on the door, a lock that only he had the key to. "It's for safety," he'd said when I asked about it. "Some of those tools are dangerous. I don't want the grandkids wandering in there and getting hurt." It made sense at the time, but now, hearing that noise, a rustling sound like someone moving around, my mind went to dark places. Was someone in there? Was Frank keeping someone in our garage? I walked out the back door, across our small yard, toward the garage. The October sun was warm on my face, but I felt cold all over. The noise had stopped. Everything was quiet except for the sound of Mrs. Chen's wind chimes next door and a dog barking somewhere down the street. The garage door had a small window at the top. I'd never looked through it before, never had a reason to, but now I stood on my tiptoes and peered inside. What I saw made my knees buckle. There was someone in there, sitting at Frank's workbench, with silver hair, wearing a gray cardigan I recognized, one I'd bought Frank 3 Christmases ago. It was Frank. He was sitting there, calm as could be, doing a crossword puzzle, wearing headphones. A cup of coffee sat beside him, steam still rising from it. If Frank was here in our garage doing a crossword puzzle, then who the hell was at that motel with 3 women? What I didn't know then was that my husband had been living a double life, and the truth was so much stranger and so much more dangerous than I ever could have imagined. If you're connecting with my story, please press that like button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. It helps to know I'm not alone in this. For a long moment, I just stood there, frozen outside that garage window, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Frank was inside, but Frank was also at the motel. I needed to get inside that garage. I tried the door handle, but it was locked, as always. That's when I remembered. Years ago, when Frank first put the lock on the garage door, I'd insisted on having a spare key. What if there's an emergency? I'd argued. What if something happens and I need to get in there? He'd reluctantly agreed and given me a copy, which I'd put in the kitchen junk drawer. I hurried back into the house, my heart pounding. I dumped out the entire drawer onto the counter. Rubber bands, old batteries, expired coupons. And there at the bottom was a small silver key on a blue plastic tag that said "Garage" in Frank's handwriting. I grabbed it and went back outside. My hands were shaking so badly it took me 3 tries to get the key in the lock. Finally, it turned. I pushed the door open slowly. The man at the workbench didn't react. Those headphones must have been blocking out everything. I could see now that he was listening to something, his head bobbing slightly to a rhythm I couldn't hear. "Frank?" I said, my voice barely a whisper. Nothing. He kept working on his crossword, completely oblivious. I stepped closer, my heart hammering in my chest. That's when I noticed a small camping cot set up in the corner with a pillow and blanket, a mini fridge humming in the corner, a hot plate. This wasn't just a workshop. Someone had been living here. "Frank!" I said louder, reaching out to tap his shoulder. He jumped about a foot in the air, yanking off his headphones and spinning around. When he saw me, His face went white as a sheet. "Helen!" he gasped, one hand clutching his chest. "You scared me half to death. What are you doing out here?" I just stared at him. Up close, I could see it was definitely my husband. That small scar above his left eyebrow from when he'd fallen off a ladder 12 years ago. The mole on his neck. The wedding ring I'd put on his finger 47 years ago. "What am I doing out here?" I repeated, my voice rising. "What are you doing out here? And why?" I held up my phone, showing him Tyler's photo. "Why are you also at the Pines Motor Lodge right now with 3 women?" Frank's face went from white to gray. He looked at the photo, then at me, then back at the photo. His mouth opened and closed like a fish. "Helen, I can explain," he started. "Then explain," I said, my voice tight. "Explain why our grandson just saw you at a seedy motel with 3 women. Explain the camping cot and the mini fridge," I said, pointing around us. "It's not what you think," he said, standing up from the workbench. He was pleading now, his hands raised. "Please, just let me—" "Not what I think." I could feel my hands shaking. "What I think is that my husband has been lying to me for God knows how long. What I think is that there's someone out there who looks exactly like you, doing God knows what, and you're hiding in here like—" I stopped, looked at him, really looked at him, at the way he was standing there, guilty and terrified. "Someone's been staying here," I said slowly. "Someone who looks like you, who drives your car, who wears your clothes." Frank closed his eyes. "Who is it, Frank?" My voice was barely a whisper now. "Who is he?" "His name is Dennis," Frank said quietly, not opening his eyes. He's my brother." "Your brother?" I felt confused. "But you only have—" Then it hit me. "Wait. You mentioned something once. Years ago, you'd had a few drinks at David's wedding and you said something about having a brother you'd lost touch with as a child. When I asked about it the next day, you said you didn't remember saying it." His eyes opened, surprised. "You remember that?" "I do now, but you never said—" I looked at him, really looked at the identical features. "A twin?" He nodded slowly. "We were separated when we were 8. Our parents divorced. Mom took me to Georgia. Dad took Dennis to Tennessee. We lost touch." I felt like the ground was tilting under my feet. 47 years, Frank. Why did you hide this from me?" "My mother made me promise," he said, not meeting my eyes. "After the divorce, she said we needed a fresh start. That Dennis was troubled, that he'd had problems even as a kid. She made me swear I'd never try to find him, never talk about him. And I didn't. For decades, I kept that promise." "Until 18 months ago," I said slowly, the timeline clicking into place. "That's when this started, isn't it? The physical therapy appointments?" Frank nodded miserably. "He found me through one of those ancestry DNA tests. Do you remember? Melissa gave us those kits for Christmas 2 years ago." I did remember. We'd both done them, sent off our samples, laughed at the results that said we were 99% boring European mutts, but I'd forgotten about it completely after that. "Dennis's results showed we were a match," Frank continued. "The company put us in touch. At first I was excited. After all those years, I had family I never knew I still had." His voice cracked. "He told me he'd had a hard life. Failed marriage, health problems, couldn't hold down a job. He was broke, Helen, desperate." "So you helped him?" I asked. "At first, yes, I sent him money, not much. I knew we didn't have much to spare, but then he asked to come visit, said he wanted to meet me in person, see where I lived, meet my family." Frank rubbed his face with both hands. "He showed up about 18 months ago, and Helen, when I saw him, it was like looking in a mirror. Even our voices were the same." "And then what?" I continued, though part of me didn't want to know. "He asked if he could stay for a few days. Said he had nowhere else to go. I set him up out here in the garage. Told you I was working on a big woodworking project and needed privacy. The lock was to keep him hidden." "A few days," I repeated. "That was 18 months ago, Frank." "I know," he whispered. It kept extending." He'd say he needed a little more time to get back on his feet, to find a job, to figure things out. And I felt so guilty, Helen. Guilty that I'd had this good life while he'd struggled. guilty that Mom had chosen me and not him. I thought I owed him. I looked around the garage, at the cot, the mini fridge, the hot plate. So he's been living here, in our garage, for a year and a half? Not all the time, Frank said quickly. Just when he needed to lay low for a while. Those words sent ice through my veins. Lay low? What does that mean? Frank wouldn't look at me. That's when I knew there was more. So much more. Frank, I said, my voice deadly calm, what is he doing at that motel with those 3 women? I don't know exactly, he said, but I could tell he was lying. Don't you dare lie to me. Not now, not after all this. I held up my phone again, zoomed in on the blonde woman with her hand on Dennis's back, on my husband's back, as far as anyone watching would know. What is he doing? Frank's shoulders slumped in defeat. He said he had a business opportunity, that he'd found a way to make money. He borrowed my car, my jacket, my ID sometimes, said he needed to seem respectable, established. I thought he was just, I don't know, meeting with investors. A motel? I asked skeptically. With 3 middle-aged women? That's what you thought he was doing? I didn't ask too many questions, Frank admitted. I didn't want to know, but I did want to know. I needed to know. Because whatever Dennis was doing, he was doing it while looking exactly like my husband. And everyone who saw him, Tyler, those 3 women, the motel staff, they all thought it was Frank. I need you to tell me everything, I said. Right now, no more secrets, no more protecting him. Frank took a deep breath. About 6 months ago, Dennis told me he'd figured out a way to help people. He said he'd always been good at listening, at making people feel better. He started advertising himself as a counselor. But he's not a counselor, I said in disbelief. No, Frank agreed quietly, but he told people he was. He used my name, Frank Porter. He said it sounded more trustworthy than Dennis. He made up credentials, a whole backstory, and he started seeing clients. My stomach dropped. Clients? What kind of clients? Women, mostly. Older women. Widows. He found them through support groups online, through church bulletins. He'd tell them he specialized in grief counseling, that he could help them work through their loss. He charged $200 for a group session. A motel, I said, the pieces finally clicking together. He's been scamming grieving widows. Frank nodded miserably. He said the motel was cheaper than renting an office, more discreet. The women didn't seem to mind. They were just grateful to have someone who would listen, who understood their pain. I felt sick. And you let him do this, using your name, your identity? I didn't know the extent of it at first, Frank said defensively. By the time I realized what he was really doing, he'd already seen dozens of women. He said he was helping them, that he was providing a real service even if the credentials weren't technically real. And the money, Helen, he was making good money. He started paying me $500 a week to keep quiet, to let him use the garage, to let him borrow my identity when he needed it. $500 a week for 18 months. I did the math quickly. That was over $30,000. Where's the money, Frank? I asked. He gestured toward the workbench. I walked over and opened the drawer he'd indicated. Inside was a metal cash box. I opened it. Stacks of bills, neatly organized. There's about $8,000 left, Frank said. The rest, I've been using it. For your medications after the insurance stopped covering them. For Melissa when her car broke down last year. For Tyler's tuition when he said he might have to drop out. I told them I'd been doing some consulting work. They never questioned it. I stared at that money, feeling like I didn't recognize my own life anymore. My family's life was being paid for with money from scamming, grieving widows. Those women, I said slowly, they think they've been seeing a real counselor. They've been sharing their grief, their pain, their secrets with a con man using your name. I know, Frank whispered. I know it's wrong. I've known for months, but I didn't know how to stop it without everyone finding out what I'd done, without losing everything. Where does Dennis go when he's not here? I asked. He has an apartment somewhere. I don't know where exactly. He comes and goes. Sometimes he stays here for a few days, sometimes I don't see him for weeks. And the physical therapy appointments? Frank had the grace to look ashamed. There is no physical therapy. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I come out here while Dennis takes my car and goes to his sessions. I wait until he comes back, and then I go back in the house like I've been gone. You were always at book club or bridge or out with friends. I didn't think you'd notice. But I had noticed. Not the details, but the distance, the way we'd drifted apart, the way Frank had become more secretive, more withdrawn. I'd blamed it on age, on the natural decline of a long marriage. I'd never imagined this. I need to meet him, I said suddenly. What? Frank looked panicked. No, Helen, that's not a good idea. I don't care if it's a good idea. This man has been using your identity for 18 months. He's been scamming vulnerable women. He's been living in our garage. I need to see him. I need to talk to him. I pulled out my phone. Call him. Tell him to come back here. He won't come. Not if he knows you know about him. Then don't tell him I know. Tell him you need to see him urgently. Tell him it's about the money. Whatever it takes, get him here. Frank stared at me for a long moment, then slowly pulled out a phone. Not his regular phone, I noticed, but a cheap, prepaid flip phone. He dialed. Dennis? It's me. I need you to come back to the house now. There's a problem with the money. No, I can't explain over the phone. Just come back. Park a block away like usual and come through the back. Okay, see you in 20 minutes. He hung up and looked at me with haunted eyes. Helen, I'm so sorry. I never wanted you to find out like this. I never wanted you to find out at all. We waited in tense silence. I stood by the window watching the street. Frank sat on his stool, head in his hands. 15 minutes passed, then 20, then 25. Maybe he's not coming, Frank said hopefully. But then I saw him, walking down the sidewalk, hands in the pockets of that blue windbreaker. From this distance, he looked exactly like Frank. Same walk, same posture. He turned into our yard, moving casually like he'd done this 100 times before. He came around to the back and headed straight for the garage. I stepped back from the window, out of sight. Frank stood up, looking like he might be sick. The door opened. Frank, what's the emergency? I was in the middle of a dash. Dennis stopped mid-sentence when he saw me. For a moment, we just stared at each other. The resemblance was uncanny. He was Frank, but not Frank. Same features, but something in the eyes was different. Harder, more calculating. Well, he said finally, a slow smile spreading across his face. I guess the cat's out of the bag. Get out of my garage, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, and give me my husband's jacket. Dennis laughed. Your garage? See, that's funny because technically I've been living here for 1.5 years. I think that gives me some squatter's rights, don't you? Get out, I repeated. Now. Or what? He took a step closer to me. You'll call the police? And tell them what exactly? That I'm staying in your garage with your husband's permission? That I've been using his name with his full knowledge and cooperation? He had a point. Frank had been complicit in all of this. Calling the police would mean exposing everything Frank had done, everything he'd allowed. Those women you've been counseling, I said, they think you're a licensed therapist. They've paid you thousands of dollars. That's fraud. Is it, though? Dennis cocked his head. I never claimed to be licensed. I said I was a counselor. That's not a protected term, and I have been helping them. Ask any of them. They'll tell you I've made a real difference in their lives. By lying to them, I said, gritting my teeth. By listening to them. By giving them a safe space to share their grief. Most therapists spend 50 minutes watching the clock and scribbling notes. I actually care. You care about their money, I corrected. Sure. I care about the money. I'm not doing this for free, but I also provide a real service. Those women leave my sessions feeling better. Isn't that worth something? I looked at Frank, who was still standing by the workbench, silent. Tell him to leave. Tell him you're done covering for him. But Frank didn't say anything. He just looked at the floor. That's what I thought, Dennis said smugly. Frank's not going to kick me out. He needs me as much as I need him. Maybe more. Because if I go, I take all those dirty little secrets with me, and I might just feel compelled to share them with your daughter, your grandkids, your friends at Bridge Club. Are you threatening me? I asked. I'm stating facts. Frank here has been taking money from me for 18 months. He's been helping me impersonate him. He's been lying to you, to your family, to everyone. If this comes out, his reputation is destroyed. Is that really what you want?" I looked at my husband, willing him to stand up, to defend us, to tell his brother to leave. But he just stood there, paralyzed by fear or guilt or both. "I'll make you a deal," Dennis said, his tone turning. "I'll move my operation somewhere else. No more using the garage, no more borrowing Frank's car. I'll even change the name I use for my counseling business. But in exchange, you forget you ever knew about me, you never saw me. This conversation never happened. Deal?" "No deal," I said firmly. "Those women you've been scamming deserve to know the truth." Dennis's smile faded. "Then you'll have to explain how your husband knew about it all along and did nothing, how he profited from it, how he used the money to help his family while claiming it came from consulting work. Is that really the legacy you want Frank to leave?" He had me cornered, and he knew it. If I exposed Dennis, I exposed Frank. But those women, those grieving, vulnerable women who'd trusted Frank Porter with their pain. "I need time to think," I said finally. "Take all the time you need," Dennis said, his cocky smile returning. "But I think we both know how this is going to end. You're going to do what's best for your family, you're going to protect Frank, and I'm going to keep doing what I do. Maybe a little more carefully from now on, but I'm not stopping. There's too much money in it." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Oh, and Helen? Thanks for not making this difficult. Frank told me you were a reasonable woman. Looks like he was right." Then he was gone, disappearing around the corner of the house like he'd never been there at all. I looked at Frank. He finally met my eyes. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." But sorry wasn't enough. Sorry didn't undo 18 months of lies. Sorry didn't help those women who'd been scammed. Sorry didn't fix our broken marriage. "I need to go inside," I said. "I need to think." I left him standing in that garage and walked back into our house, back into a life that would never be the same again. Over the next 3 days, I barely spoke to Frank. He slept in the garage, whether by choice or because Dennis had moved back in. I didn't know and didn't ask. I went through the motions of my normal life, book club, grocery shopping, lunch with my friend Margaret. But my mind was racing the entire time. I kept thinking about those 3 women in Tyler's photo, the blonde in the burgundy sweater with her hand on Dennis's back. Who were they? What had they lost? What stories had they shared with a man they thought they could trust? On the 4th day, I made a decision. I drove to the Pines Motor Lodge. It was just as run down as I'd imagined. Peeling paint, weeds growing through cracks in the parking lot, a flickering neon sign that said, "Vacancy." I went to the office. A bored-looking young man sat behind the desk, playing on his phone. "Excuse me," I said. "I'm looking for information about someone who holds meetings here." "A counselor, Frank Porter?" The young man looked up. "Oh yeah, the grief guy. He's here every Tuesday and Thursday, 2 to 4, room 17. "Is he here now?" I asked. It was Wednesday. "Nah, just Tuesdays and Thursdays, like I said." "Do you know the names of any of the women who attend his sessions?" The young man gave me a suspicious look. "I can't give out guest information, lady." Privacy and all that. I'd expected this. I pulled out my phone and showed him Tyler's photo. "This is my husband, or rather, someone impersonating my husband. He's been running a scam, claiming to be a licensed counselor when he's not. Those women don't know they're being lied to." The young man's eyes widened. "Oh man, that's messed up. I need to contact them. Can you help me?" He looked at me for a long moment, then sighed. "Look, I shouldn't do this. But my mom got scammed by some fake financial advisor last year, lost her whole savings. So yeah, I'll help you." He pulled up something on his computer. "The room is always reserved under the name F. Porter, but the women who come, they always pay in cash. No credit cards, no names. Very private, you know?" My heart sank. "So there's no way to contact them?" "Well," he looked around to make sure we were alone. "One of them left a sweater here last week, a burgundy one. She called asking if we'd found it. I have her number, the blonde in the burgundy sweater, the one with her hand on Dennis's back." "Can you give me that number?" I asked. He hesitated, then wrote it on a piece of paper. "Don't tell anyone where you got this." "I won't, thank you." I went back to my car and stared at that phone number. What would I even say? Hi, I'm the wife of the man you think is counseling you, except it's not my husband, it's his con artist twin brother. But I had to try. I dialed the number. It rang 3 times before a woman answered. Hello? Hi, I said, my voice shaking slightly. My name is Helen Porter. I'm calling about the counseling sessions you've been attending at the Pines Motor Lodge. There was a sharp intake of breath. How did you get this number? Who are you? I'm Frank Porter's wife, I said. The real Frank Porter, the man you've been seeing for counseling. That's not my husband, it's his twin brother, and he's not a licensed counselor. He's been lying to you and the other women. Silence on the other end. Then, that's not funny, if this is some kind of joke. It's not a joke, please, just listen. His name is Dennis. He and my husband were separated as children. Dennis has been using Frank's identity to run these counseling sessions. I have proof. I have photos. I can show you. More silence. When she spoke again, her voice was different, smaller. How do I know you're telling the truth? Meet me, I said, somewhere public. I'll show you everything I know, and then you can decide what you want to do. Another long pause. The Starbucks on Roswell Road, tomorrow at 10. I'll be there, I said. Thank you for listening. She hung up without saying goodbye. The next morning, I arrived at Starbucks at 9:45. I'd brought everything, Tyler's photo, the flip phone I'd found in the garage with Dennis's number, bank statements showing the cash deposits Frank had been making. At 10:03, a woman walked in, blonde, probably in her early 60s, wearing a burgundy sweater. She looked around nervously, then spotted me. I had told her I'd be wearing a blue cardigan and sitting by the window. She approached slowly, like she was ready to bolt at any moment. Helen? Yes. Thank you for coming. Can I get you a coffee? She shook her head and sat down across from me, perched on the edge of her chair. Show me what you have. I spread everything out on the table, the photo, the bank statements, the flip phone. I explained everything. Dennis, finding Frank living in our garage, using Frank's identity to run the counseling scam. She looked at everything with growing horror. Oh my God, she whispered. Oh my God, I told him everything. About Richard, about how he died, about how lonely I've been. I trusted him. I'm so sorry, I said. I know this must be devastating. We all trusted him, she continued, her voice rising slightly. There are 5 of us who attend regularly. We thought we'd finally found someone who understood, who could help us move forward. She looked up at me, tears in her eyes. It was all a lie. The listening was real, I said gently. The space he created for you to share your grief. That was real, but yes, his credentials were fake. His name is fake. Everything else about him is fake. She was crying now, quietly, trying not to make a scene. How could someone do that? Prey on people who are already hurting. I don't know, I said honestly, but you and the other women deserve to know the truth. Do you think you could contact them? Tell them what I've told you? She nodded, wiping her eyes. Joyce, Patricia, Anita, and Susan. We've become friends through the sessions. We usually get coffee afterward, talk about what came up. They need to know. There's one more thing, I said hesitantly. My husband, the real Frank, he knew about this. He let Dennis use his identity. He took money from Dennis in exchange for staying quiet. I'm not sure what I'm going to do about that yet, but I wanted you to know. She looked at me with something like pity. That must be horrible for you, finding out your husband has been lying to you. It is, I admitted, but right now I'm more worried about you and the other women. Have you given Dennis a lot of money? About $1,600 over the past 8 months, she said. $200 per session, twice a month. The others probably similar amounts. I did the quick math. If there were 5 women attending regularly, twice a month at $200 per session, that was at least $4,000 a month for 18 months. Dennis had made close to $70,000 off these women. I want to give you a refund, I said impulsively, from the money Dennis paid Frank. It's not right that you lost money to this scam. She shook her head. Keep your money. You're going to need it, but I want you to know we're going to report this. All of us. To the police, to the licensing board, whatever it takes. I understand, I said. And for what it's worth, I think that's the right thing to do. We talked for a few more minutes. She told me about her husband, Richard, who died of a sudden heart attack 2 years ago, about how lost she'd felt, how the grief counseling sessions had given her something to look forward to, a place to be understood. I should have known something was off, she said. The location, the cash-only policy, but I was so desperate for help, I didn't question it. That's not your fault, I told her. Dennis is very good at what he does. He targeted women who were vulnerable, who were grieving. After she left, I sat in that Starbucks for a long time, staring at the evidence spread across the table. I thought about Frank, waiting at home, probably wondering what I was doing. I thought about Dennis, probably preparing for his next session, his next group of victims. And I thought about our marriage, 47 years that had somehow led to this moment. I gathered up everything and drove home. Frank was in the living room, sitting in his recliner, pretending to read the newspaper, but I could tell he hadn't turned a page in a while. I met with one of Dennis's clients, I said, standing in the doorway. He looked up, startled. Helen, you shouldn't have... She's going to report him to the police. Her and the other women. They're filing a complaint. Frank's face went white. But that means they'll find out about me, about my involvement. Yes, I said simply. It does. Helen, please. Isn't there something we can do, some way to stop them from going to the police? No, I said, there isn't. And even if there was, I wouldn't do it. Those women deserve justice, Frank. They deserve to have their money back and their trust restored, even if it costs us everything. But our reputation, our family... Should have thought of that 18 months ago when you made a deal with your brother, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. This is your mess, Frank. Your choices, your consequences. He looked like I'd slapped him. Are you leaving me? It was the question I'd been avoiding for days. Was I leaving him after 47 years, after 3 children and 7 grandchildren, after surviving so much together? Was this the thing that would finally break us? I don't know, I said honestly. Right now, I don't even know who you are. The man I married would never have done something like this. The man I married had integrity, had honor, but apparently I never really knew him at all. You did know me, Frank said desperately. You do know me. I made a terrible mistake, but I'm still the same person I've always been. No, I said quietly. You're not. Or maybe you are, and I've been blind to it all along. Either way, I need time, space. I'm going to stay with Melissa for a while. How long? He asked. I don't know, as long as it takes. I went upstairs and packed a bag. When I came back down, Frank was still sitting in his recliner, looking small and old and broken. I love you, Helen, he said as I reached the door. Despite everything, I love you. I know, I said, but right now love isn't enough. I spent 2 weeks at Melissa's house. She knew something was wrong. I told her Frank and I were having problems, that we needed some time apart, but I didn't tell her the details. Not yet. I wasn't ready to watch my daughter's respect for her father crumble. During those 2 weeks, everything happened fast. The women filed their police report. Dennis was arrested trying to flee the state. He'd heard through Frank that the women knew the truth, and he'd panicked. He was charged with fraud, theft by deception, and practicing counseling without a license. Frank wasn't charged with anything, technically. The police said he'd been complicit, but not criminally liable. He'd allowed someone to use his identity, but he hadn't actively participated in the scam. But the damage was done. Word spread through our community. The police report became public record. Our church, our neighbors, our friends, everyone knew. Melissa found out when one of her coworkers saw the news article and asked if she was related to that Frank Porter. I had to explain everything then. The twin brother, the garage, the counseling scam, the money. She cried, not for the loss of her father's reputation, but for the fact that he'd kept such a massive secret from all of us. How could he lie like that? She kept asking. For 18 months? I didn't have a good answer. I still don't. Tyler blamed himself, said if he hadn't taken that photo, none of this would have happened. I had to explain to him that he'd done the right thing, that the truth needed to come out, even when it hurt. Frank called me every day. At first, I didn't answer. Then I started picking up, letting him say his piece. He was sorry. He'd made a mistake. He wanted a chance to make it right. He'd do anything. But what could he do? The damage was irreversible. 5 women had been scammed out of their money and their trust. Our marriage was in pieces. After 2 weeks, I went back home. Not because I'd forgiven Frank, but because I needed to face this, to figure out what came next. Frank had aged 10 years in those 14 days. He'd lost weight. There were dark circles under his eyes. The house was a mess. Dishes piled in the sink, laundry overflowing, newspapers scattered everywhere. "I'm not back to stay," I told him when I walked in. "I'm back to figure out what to do next." He nodded, not arguing. "Whatever you need." We lived like roommates for a while. Polite, distant, sharing space, but not a life. Frank went to see a therapist, alone at first, then he asked if I'd consider couples counseling. I said yes, but I wasn't sure why. Maybe because 47 years felt like too much to throw away without trying, or maybe because I was scared of being alone after so long. The counseling helped, slowly. Our therapist, Dr. Martinez, didn't let Frank off easy. She made him confront why he'd made the choices he'd made. The guilt over his brother, the fear of disappointing me, the rationalization that the money was helping our family so it couldn't be all bad. And she made me confront my own role in our failing marriage. Not in Frank's choices, those were his alone, but in the distance that had grown between us over the years. The way I'd stopped asking questions, stopped paying attention, stopped truly seeing my husband. "You both checked out," Dr. Martinez said during one session. "In different ways, you both stopped being present in your marriage." Frank's betrayal was the symptom, not the disease. It was hard to hear, but it was true. Dennis's trial happened 6 months after his arrest. He pled guilty to all charges and was sentenced to 3 years in prison and ordered to pay restitution to his victims. Frank testified, admitting his role in the scheme. It was humiliating for him, standing in that courtroom, admitting to everyone what he'd done. But it was also the beginning of something. Accountability, honesty, the hard work of rebuilding trust. The 5 women, Joyce, Patricia, Anita, Susan, and Barbara, got their money back. Not from Dennis, who had nothing, but from Frank and me. We gave them the $8,000 from the cash box, plus another $8,000 from our savings. It wasn't everything they'd lost, but it was what we could afford. Joyce called me after she received her check. "Thank you," she said. "Not just for the money, for telling me the truth, for caring enough to warn me." "I'm sorry it happened at all," I told her. "Me too. But you know what? I found a real therapist now, a licensed one, and I'm actually doing better. Maybe I needed to know I could survive being betrayed again. Sounds strange, but it's true. I thought about that a lot, about how sometimes the worst things that happen to us can also teach us the most about ourselves. Today, it's been 2 years since Tyler made that phone call. Frank and I are still married, still together, but our relationship is different now. We talk more about hard things and scary things and uncomfortable things. We don't let distance grow between us anymore. We had to leave our church. The judgment was too much. We found a new one where nobody knows our story. We have new friends, a new start. Some of our old friends stuck by us. Our kids struggled with it all. Melissa forgave her father eventually, but it took time. Our son David, who lives in California, barely speaks to Frank anymore. He says he's working on it, but I don't know if he'll ever fully get past it. Our youngest, Sarah, has been the most understanding, maybe because she's a therapist herself and sees the complexity in human choices. The grandkids know now, too. We sat them all down last year and explained what had happened in age-appropriate ways. Tyler already knew, of course. The others were shocked, hurt, confused, but kids are resilient. They still love their grandpa. They just understand now that he's human, fallible, capable of making terrible mistakes. As for me, I'm still processing it all. Some days I'm angry at Frank for what he did. Other days I'm angry at myself for not seeing it sooner. Most days I'm just sad. Sad for the women who were hurt. Sad for the years of trust that were broken. Sad for the marriage we used to have. But I'm also hopeful. Because if we can survive this, we can survive anything. And Because I'm learning that marriage isn't about perfection. It's about choosing every day to keep showing up, to keep trying, to keep loving, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Frank still has nightmares sometimes about Dennis, about the trial, about what he did. I wake up and hear him crying in the next room, and I go to him, sit with him, hold his hand. Not because I've forgotten what he did, but because after 47 years, love is more complicated than right and wrong. I don't know if our marriage will ever feel fully healed, but I know we're trying, that we're doing the work, that we're honest now in a way we never were before. And maybe that's enough. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps you in some way, even if just to know that you're not alone in the mess and complexity of life and love and marriage. Please press the like button and subscribe to this channel. It's free and helps other families find this story too. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from and whether you think I made the right choice.